ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to DurianASEAN. You are with Grace at ASEAN Breakfast Call. So this session we'll be delivering news from Southeast Asia, and you are at ASEAN Dailies. So the first news, it's the most highlighted news for the past 10 days, which is regarding the Rohingya community on the boat at sea, who were rejected from these three nations, Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia. So they are at the critical conditions, and then some of them are just put to death on a daily basis. And where are the helping hands to these people who are there, desperately looking for help and also aids to for themselves, because now they're at the state where they just kill themselves just for their survival. Unfortunately, they have to go through all that. So after nearly 2 months at sea, and also with the supplies running low, survivors told how the situation became desperate as they were pushed between Malaysia, Indonesia, as well as Thailand. With neither of them, they are willing to accept them. And at the same time, these were the latest horror story to emerge from human trafficking crisis gripping Southeast Asia, and this definitely gives a lot of pressure on ASEAN level, where we've always shouted and then want to become one voice as ASEAN, but people have been asking, where is the voice of ASEAN? Where does ASEAN stand at this point? But if you go back, these issues is not something new. In fact, these issues has been going around. But why wasn't it highlighted? It could have been highlighted in one of the conferences, events. But only at the human rights organizations level, it was only discussed among them. So NGOs and other human rights organizations, they have been helping, giving hands to them, but they need bigger helps at this point. And the region is facing a lot of calls to address the problem, but hopes of finding this coordinated solution look pretty dim with Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. They are vowing to turn back these stricken boats, and also Myanmar threatening to boycott the planned summit on this issue. But where is Indonesia? These Indonesian authorities, they pledged to turn away. Vessels did not stop local fishermen from going to the rescue of the latest boatload of these former migrants, which includes around 61 children, and then to arrive in the country waters. So what do you think of this whole issues at the point? They left the country to look for better place to stay. So these asylum seekers, now they are killing each other. They are throwing themselves each other into the sea to look for a better solution at this point, who has been floating on the sea for more than 2 months already. And Southeast Asia migrants, this is definitely at the crisis. And then Burma faces blame over this influx of boat people. So these three nations who have rejected of coming in of all these illegal migrants people. So they have sparked this outrage of turning away these vessels overloaded with the migrants from Burma's ethnic Rohingya minority, as well as with the poor Bangladeshis. So officials have increasingly pointed the finger at Burma and also its alleged systematic persecution of Rohingya for fueling these mass migrations. And this happened mainly because of what they have said to the public, that persecution will happen. So it's either you leave the country or you stay in the camp. But as at ASEAN level, we're talking about ASEAN level again here, where is the standard policies and regulations that other neighboring countries can come up with some kind of
a solution or even the mechanism to be able to overcome these issues. But now the finger is pointed at Burma, and then it's said that they should deal with this Rohingya community internally instead of forcing it on its Southeast Asian neighbors. That's what the Malaysian Deputy Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin channeled his expressions to Burma. But at this point, Malaysia being a chair of ASEAN this year, this is one of the issues at human rights and also with other matters around in ASEAN. It is very significant to be raised and at the civil society level as well as to high authorities level. So this, we can't say this is not our concern, even though Myanmar itself, it has the internal issues just like our nation or any other neighboring nations. But this has already become a regional issues already, and we can't simply turn away our responsibility and channeling the blame on Burma only. And just to add another quote by Anifa, who said, "It is one of the topics, yes, and also is very important issues in this agenda. For sure, because nearly 3,000 migrants have been rescued or they swam ashore in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand in recent days. But these people, they have been suffering from, at the sea especially, of starvation, sicknesses, or drowning when it is necessary. And activists, they have said that thousands more are feared to be drifting helplessly at sea after this Thai crackdown on human trafficking disrupted basic migration routes from the Bay of Bengal to Southeast Asia." And at the same time, the Malaysian Prime Minister Najib he urged Burma to help solve what he called humanitarian catastrophe. In fact, yes, just like how we mentioned, humanitarian catastrophe, it is, but it is at regional level already. And for sure, Malaysia has played a large part, but we are not the source of the problem, which is another quotation that it really shows that we are straying away from the responsibility what Malaysia needs to do at this point. So where is this ASEAN responsibility, and where is Malaysia's responsibility being a chair of ASEAN this year? So Southeast Asia's this particular issues and this timid diplomacy and so-called obscene or evil approach to human trafficking is to blame for its both people influx and also to overcoming the crisis will pose a severe test for regional growth to address these divisive issues. The region has allowed the problem to fester by failing to curb Myanmar's systematic abuse. This has been going on. This is a long-term issues. But where is this ASEAN standpoint at these situations? This unwanted Rohingya people, and the number is increasing, even though it's still a minority Muslim ethnic minority. But they've been fleeing abroad for the past decades. So ultimately, I personally think also this is a problem of ASEAN. This will put another image of ASEAN when just after we had the ASEAN summit in Malaysia. And the both people crisis puts enormous pressures on the bloc to rethink its policy of non-interference as well. Well, even Europe, which enjoys a far greater political cohesion and a resource than ASEAN, they're also struggling to deal with the influx of migrants crossing the Mediterranean from North Africa, and this is just an example. And the European Union proposal to distribute asylum seekers among its members has sown division, but the robust debate is underway and there is a broad agreement that something must be done. But coming back to Southeast Asia, however, it will need to find it harder to master this political will, and we need to gain a lot more political will at this situation, particularly given the added challenge that one of its own, especially Myanmar, is a major source of refugees. And Malaysia has quite a number of refugees from Myanmar already in certain areas in Malaysia. But they are still at the very poor conditions. A lot of them are not treated as human beings. In fact, they are just thrown as trash, and they are not given the right education. They are not given the right even to survive in one country. But there are the people who fled from their countries to look for a better place to stay. But the question here is it really a better place coming to or going away from their own countries and live there and still yet treated really, really badly? We'll be back to deliver other news from Southeast Asia after this break, so stay tuned.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Good morning and welcome back to DurianASEAN. You're still with Grace at ASEAN Dailies,
where we deliver news from Southeast Asia. So perhaps this time we will travel to perhaps our neighboring country, which is Indonesia, where Indonesia is set for this cabinet reshuffle. And our question here now is, Jokowi's ratings are dropping, and how can he really redeem himself at this point? Because Joko Widodo is preparing to reshuffle his cabinet barely half a year into his presidency, as he seeks to address a drop in his popularity amid to a slowing Indonesian economic and also weakening currency. Just a month ago, there was an incident where we had a capital punishment in Indonesia according to the law there. So from Australia and also other nations, they were pretty much outraged regarding the human trafficking issues over there. And here, Indonesia, by having this reshuffling in the cabinet, what will give and what could be the next image of Joko Widodo in Indonesia and also his image to the world? The Vice President explained that the new leadership had ushered in a period of clean governance with transparent decision making and also its end to cronyism. So this a minister or even president cannot appoint his man for any job. Now it should be an open system, and it's very, very revolutionary. In fact, Mr. Widodo, who was formerly governor of Jakarta, he swept to power last October. High hopes, both domestically as well as overseas internationally, that pledged reforms could speed the economic ascent of Indonesia. However, with this support for the president has waned amid the lackluster pace of change, and also it brought a disappointment that he has not managed to bring about this broader change of guard in the upper echelon of nation politics. So when you think of this economic in Indonesia, what is the best way, and that in fact can it actually grow? Well, there is a analysis that Indonesia's economic growth in 2015 can be over 5%. So there will still be reached a mark over 5%, although in the first quarter of the year it grew by only by 4.7%. And
According to economic observer Destri Damayanti, he says, I am still convinced that economic growth this year will be over. And she's pretty certain that all this infrastructure development project will be expedited to ensure that economic growth reaches 5.3% by the end of this year. The relatively low growth in the first quarter of 2015 in Indonesia was due to people's low purchasing power, and also because they still felt the presence of uncertainties. So with these conditions in Indonesia, business also adopted to the wait and watch attitude and are doubtful about whether the government will realize their development projects. So here we are not really talking about the governments need to complete the whole infrastructure system, because for sure it needs time to develop and also to improve all this system. However, the market would like to see the progress such as land clearance and perhaps to have a better transportation system which would give confidence to investors locally and as well as internationally. And BI or Bank Indonesia is pretty confident the country's economy will grow and also to be as expected with a maximum government contribution in the budget spending in 2015. So there is a brighter side when it comes to economic growth, especially in the infrastructure, that economic growth target will remain the same at 5.4 to 5.6%. So Marto Wadojo added that the target will be reached through the large government spending on infrastructure development to boost investment as well as consumption as the drivers of economic growth. So hopefully with this announcement of this a slight brighter economic growth and also improvement in Indonesia, as well as the Indonesia's reshuffling in the cabinet, what will be the next steps and could it actually happen? So next news, we move on to perhaps a comparison among India versus Indonesia versus the Philippines. So which country do you think is the best market to invest in? Would you like to invest in Indonesia or Philippines or India? So it's like if your company is ready to expand a new market in Asia, so potential destinations have been narrowed down to 3 apparently, which are India, Indonesia, and the Philippines. So which one is the investment grade emerging Asian economies at this roughly the same stage of the development? So there are pros and cons of each country. So Indonesia has a better record than India and the Philippines on institutional strength, infrastructure, health, and primary education. This could be sort of a long-term and also time-consuming assignment in the past. However, because of the advent of the internet, easy availability of all this free data, as well as the technology tools such as business analytics, software, and also this task has just become so easier. So there are a lot of analyses that have been published, and also to see the comparison among these countries. So we can first look at look for the information on the macro environment. So how big is the market? What does the consumer purchasing power look like? And how fast is the economic growing? And what is the state of institutions, infrastructure, health, and education? So apparently when it comes to market size, with 7 starting from 1 to 7, 7 being the top score, India has the highest score among these 3 nations. And the GDP per capita, Indonesia has the highest. and the average GDP growth percentage-wise 7.5, which India ranks the highest. And with the institutions, infrastructure, and health and primary education, like I mentioned before, Indonesia has the highest. So with that said, Indonesia is also pretty much a sizable market. The country, after all, has the population of more than 250 million people. And in ASEAN, it's one of the largest population that it holds, with India is 1.2 billion, and with 100 billion inhabitants, there are plenty of consumers in the Philippines as well. However, India is the fastest growing in terms of economic expansion, 7.5% on average for the forecast period 2009 to perhaps 2018. So both Indonesia and the Philippines are expected to grow at a slower, although it is still significant, and is 5.7 in the same period. So in looking at the microenvironment, the physical, political, and social infrastructures are equally important as the sustainability. So on these measures, well, this is according to the World Economic Forum, Indonesia has a better record than India and the Philippines on institutional strength, infrastructure, health, and the primary educations. So those are a bit of economic side as well as the predictions that has announced publicly. So we'll take another short break. So when we're back, we'll perhaps discuss more news from Southeast Asia. So stay tuned.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to DurianASEAN at ASEAN Daily. You're still with Grace, delivering news from Southeast Asia. So let's travel to Thailand this time. Thailand's Yingluck faces trial and political ruin. So this first female prime minister faces the court sometime Tuesday last week at the start of negligence trial, which could see her jailed for the decade, and it delivered a hammer blow to the political dominance of her family. So apparently she's accused of a criminal negligence over the populist but economically disastrous rice subsidy scheme, which paid farmers in the rural Shinawatra heartland twice the market rate for their crops. She is not accused of corruption, but of failing to prevent alleged graft within the program, which will probably cost billions of dollars and also galvanized the protests that eventually felled her elected government, leading to last makeup. And also Thailand's military appointed parliament impeached in January over the scheme. So it's a move which is banned her from politics for about 5 years now. So with this news, we can also perhaps travel to Vietnam this time, that Vietnam overtakes US most of EU and biggest ever education rankings. So Vietnam ranked 12th out of 76 economics in a new global education survey, which is overtaking the US and the many EU countries, international media reported. So this ranking is by economic think tank OECD and based on the 15-year-old's performance in maths and science tests. So the US placed 28th, while most of the EU, including Denmark, Sweden, and the UK, were outside the top 15. So this is actually a positively surprising news to ASEAN. So Asian economics dominated the top positions. Singapore took the top place, followed by Hong Kong, South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. Going to African countries, on the other hand, were mostly at the bottom of the ranking, which OECD's Education Director Andreas Skitscher said. It's a truly global scale of the equality of education for the first time.
So if you go to the Asian classroom, you will find teachers who expect every student to succeed. Well, this could be also depending on the system of the oldest education system in Asia, where a lot of people do believe that the oldest education system in Asia is based on exam and success, the repetition of this system. However, it is a surprise that all this stereotype of education appearance to the world was sort of proven that Vietnam, one of the nations, Asian nation, Vietnam, did overtake US as well as other nations from European countries. So definitely with the better educations is expected to have a higher economic growth. At the same time, the same country as Vietnam, 1 out of 3 Samsung phones are made in Vietnam. So with development of technology, even though or no matter still having the poor internet penetrations in Southeast Asia, Vietnam manufactures the Samsung phone in the nation itself. So 11.6 million smartphone units were shipped to Vietnam. That's around 50% increase from 2013. And last year, 2014, 41% of all mobile phones shipped to Vietnam were smartphones. And this year, the shipment to Vietnam are expected to surpass those of the feature phones. So during the first half of the last year, Vietnam was Apple's fastest growing market in the world. But at the same time, Vietnam is not just a growing consumer market for mobile manufacturers. Tech giants such as Microsoft, LG, and Samsung, they have also invested billions of dollars in manufacturing and assembly all these facilities in Vietnam. So Samsung's electronics investment in Vietnam so far has around $2.5 billion in factories in the northern province of Vietnam, and also about $5 billion in a high-tech assembly plant in the northern province of the Vietnam as well, and the $1.4 billion in the plant in the Ho Chi Minh City. So definitely this is something that has been contributing to Vietnamese economic growth. And the one key takeaway from this, one of the key is that South Korea went from the war-torn economic to becoming a developed nation and also economic powerhouse within several decades. And that Vietnam should follow the similar path. If the nation can follow the example of South Korea, which during the 1960s, South Korea was considered among the poorest countries in the world. So Samsung's with a $11 billion investment in high technology and also in human capital in Vietnam will be one of the keys to developing the countries further in the future. So that's it for our ASEAN Dailies on Monday this morning. But stay tuned for the next segment, which is the Monday Morning Matters, where we'll discuss the hot topic, the recent hot topic, which is the Rohingya issues. So we'll be inviting the special speakers and then to discuss further in depth. So stay tuned.